The woman behind the general store counter had eyes like winter frost, and when Marshal Garrett first saw her in the dusty heat of Austin, Texas, that summer of 1876, he knew she carried something heavier than the flour sacks she hefted onto the wooden shelves. Helena Turner moved through the world like a ghost walking through her own life. She stacked cans with mechanical precision, counted change without meeting anyone's gaze, and spoke only when absolutely necessary. The townspeople had grown accustomed to her silence over the past 3 years since she had arrived on the afternoon stage, a young widow at 22 with nothing but a carpetbag and a letter of introduction to her late husband's distant cousin who owned the store. Now, at 25, she had become as much a fixture of Austin as the limestone buildings and the Colorado River that snake through the edge of town, but just as unremarkable. People stopped trying to draw her into conversation. They stopped inviting her to socials and church suppers. She had become invisible in her grief, and that seemed to suit her just fine. Marshal Garrett was 30 years old and had been keeping the peace in Austin for 2 years. Before that, he had driven cattle up the Chisholm Trail, worked as a ranch hand in the hill country, and spent a year tracking outlaws for the Texas Rangers. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that needed cutting and gray eyes that missed very little. He had seen men die and had killed when necessary, but he preferred talking his way out of trouble when possible. The town appreciated his steady presence, his fairness, and the fact that he did not drink to excess or frequent the saloons looking for poker games. He was reliable, which in 1876, Texas was about the highest compliment a lawman could receive. The first time Marshal Garrett came into Turner's general store, it was to buy tobacco and check on a report that some drifters had been causing trouble near the mercantile district. Helena stood behind the counter organizing receipts, her light brown hair pulled back so severely it must have given her a headache. She wore a gray dress that had been mended at the collar and sleeves. Everything about her seemed designed to disappear. "Afternoon," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "I'm looking for some tobacco, and I wanted to ask if you had seen any trouble around here lately. Had a report of some men making a nuisance of themselves." She reached for the tobacco without a word, placed it on the counter, and stated the price in a voice so flat it could have been reading a train schedule. Her hands were work-roughened, he noticed, with a small scar across her left thumb. "The men," he prompted gently. "Have you seen anyone causing problems?" "No." She held out her hand for payment, still not meeting his eyes. He paid and took his tobacco, studying her face for a moment. There was something about the absolute emptiness in her expression that troubled him. He had seen grief before, plenty of it, but this was different. This was someone who had stopped living while still breathing. "Much obliged," he said, and left. Over the next weeks, he found reasons to return to the store. He needed coffee. He needed ammunition. He needed a new shirt because his old one had torn. Each time, Helena waited on him with the same mechanical efficiency and zero warmth. She never smiled. She never made idle conversation. She completed the transaction and moved on to the next task, the next customer, the next moment to survive. Marshal Garrett began to make it his business to observe her from across the street sometimes, leaning against the post outside the telegraph office, watching the flow of people in and out of the general store. Helena arrived at dawn and left at dusk. She walked the same route every day from the boarding house where she rented a room to the store and back again. She never varied her path. She never stopped to talk to anyone. She existed in a prison of routine and numbness. It bothered him more than it should have. He had plenty to occupy his time. There were property disputes to mediate, drunks to remove from saloons, and the occasional horse thief to track down. Austin was growing fast, and with growth came problems. But still, his thoughts kept circling back to the woman with the frozen eyes. One afternoon in late July, when the heat pressed down on Austin like a heavy blanket, and even the cicadas sounded tired, Marshal Garrett found Helena struggling with a shipment of goods outside the store. Heavy crates had been unloaded from a freight wagon, and she was attempting to drag them inside one by one. The owner of the store, her late husband's cousin, Silas Turner, was nowhere to be seen, probably sleeping off his midday whiskey in the back room. "Let me help with those," Marshal Garrett said, crossing the dusty street. "I can manage," Helena said, not looking up. "I know you can, but it will go faster with two." He did not wait for permission, just grabbed one end of the crate she was wrestling with and helped lift it. Together, they carried it inside the dim, cooler interior of the store. They worked in silence for the next 20 minutes, moving all the crates inside. Helena's face remained expressionless, but he noticed the way she moved, efficiently and without wasted effort. She was stronger than she looked, and she knew how to work. When the last crate was inside, she finally looked at him directly for the first time. "Thank you," she said. The words sounded rusty, as if she had forgotten how to express gratitude. "You are welcome." He pulled off his hat and wiped sweat from his forehead. "Is Silas around?" Something flickered in her eyes, too quick to identify. "He is resting," which meant drunk. Everyone in town knew Silas Turner had a fondness for the bottle. His late wife had run the store with an iron fist, but since her death 4 years ago, Silas had been slowly drinking away the business. If not for Helena's steady work, the place would have folded already. "I see." Marshal Garrett settled his hat back on his head. "Well, if you need help with heavy deliveries, you can send word to my office. I am happy to assist." "That is not necessary." "Maybe not, but the offer stands." He touched his hat brim again and left her standing among the crates, her expression already settling back into its habitual emptiness. But something had shifted just slightly. It was like the first tiny crack in winter ice. The next time he came to the store, ostensibly to buy soap, he tried a different approach. "Hot today," he remarked as she retrieved his purchase. "Yes." She set the soap on the counter. "Though I suppose it is always hot in Austin in August." "Yes." "Could use some rain." "Yes." He paid for the soap and paused before leaving. "My name is Marcus Garrett. I know you know I am the marshal, but I thought I should introduce myself properly, seeing as I am in here often enough." She looked at him with those frost-colored eyes. For a moment, he thought she would not respond. Then, very quietly, she said, "Helena Turner. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Mrs. Turner." "Miss," she corrected. "I do not use the misses anymore." He nodded, filing that information away. She did not want to be reminded of her marriage, or perhaps of her loss. "Miss Turner, then." Over the following weeks, Marshal Garrett made it his business to stop by the store regularly. He never stayed long and never pressed her for conversation, but he always greeted her by name and usually made some small observation about the weather or the town. Her responses remained monosyllabic, but she stopped looking quite so startled when he spoke to her, as if she had forgotten people might address her as a human being rather than just a shopkeeper. In mid-August, a situation arose that would change the careful distance Helena had maintained. A group of cowboys came through town after driving a herd north, their pockets full of pay and their blood running hot with the desire to celebrate. Most of them were decent enough, but there were always a few who took celebration too far. One evening, just as Helena was closing the store, 3 of them stumbled in, demanding whiskey. "We do not sell spirits," Helena said in her flat voice, already reaching to lock the cash drawer. "You want the saloon." "Aw, come on, darling," one of them slurred, a red-faced man with tobacco stains in his beard. "We have got money. Sell us something." "The store is closed." She moved toward the door, clearly expecting them to leave. Instead, the red-faced man blocked her path. "That is not very friendly." "Please leave." Her voice remained steady, but Marshal Garrett, who had been making his evening rounds and happened to be passing by, saw the tension in her shoulders through the window. "We just want to have some fun," another cowboy said, reaching for Helena's arm. That was when Marshal Garrett pushed through the door, his hand resting casually on his gun belt. "Evening, gentlemen. I think the lady asked you to leave." The 3 cowboys turned, assessing him. The red-faced one was drunk enough to be stupid. "We are just talking to her, Marshal. No law against that." "There is when the store is closed and she has asked you to go." Marshal Garrett's voice was calm, but carried an edge of steel. "Now, I suggest you head over to the Lucky Star Saloon. First round is on the house if you go right now and cause no trouble." The promise of free whiskey and the presence of the law was enough to tip the balance. The cowboys grumbled but filed out, the red-faced one giving Helena an ugly look as he left. Marshal Garrett waited until they were well down the street before turning back to her. Helena was standing very still, her hands clenched at her sides. The emptiness in her expression had cracked just enough to show something underneath. Fear, perhaps, or anger, or both. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "Yes." But her voice shook slightly, betraying the lie. "Let me walk you back to the boarding house." "That is not necessary." "Maybe not, but I would feel better knowing you got home safe." He kept his tone gentle, not commanding, giving her a choice. After a long moment, she nodded. She locked up the store with slightly trembling hands, and they walked together through the dusty streets of Austin as the sun set in streaks of orange and purple over the western hills. They did not speak, but her breathing gradually steadied. When they reached the boarding house, a respectable establishment run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson, Helena paused at the bottom of the porch steps. "Thank you," she said, and this time the words sounded less rusty. "You are welcome. If anyone bothers you again, you send for me right away." She nodded and went inside. Marshal Garrett watched until the door closed behind her, then continued his rounds, but his mind stayed on the moment when her careful control had cracked, and he had seen the real person underneath the numbness. The next morning, when he stopped by the store, Helena actually looked up when he entered. "Marshal Garrett, Miss Turner." He approached the counter. "Just wanted to check that there was no more trouble last night." "No, it was quiet." She paused, her hands resting on the counter. "Thank you for yesterday." "Just doing my job." Still, she met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw something other than frost there. Not warmth exactly, but at least the potential for it, like the sun trying to break through clouds. "You are welcome," he said again. Then, taking a chance, he added, "It is a nice morning, cooler than it has been. Might be pleasant to take a walk before it gets too hot." Confusion crossed her face, as if he had spoken a foreign language. "I have to work." "Of course, I just meant, generally speaking. Walking in the morning can be pleasant." He felt foolish suddenly, like a boy trying to court a girl and doing it badly. But he pressed on. "Do you ever take time for yourself, Miss Turner, away from the store?" "No." The answer was simple and devastating. "There is no point." Before he could respond, another customer entered, and Helena's attention shifted away from him with clear relief. Marshal Garrett bought some coffee he did not need and left, but her words stayed with him. "There is no point." As if she had given up on the idea of joy or pleasure or anything beyond simple survival. He decided then that he would not give up on her. He did not fully understand why it mattered so much to him. Perhaps because he had seen too much death and loss in his life, and the idea of someone choosing to live as if they were already dead bothered him on a fundamental level, or perhaps it was simpler than that. Perhaps he was starting to care about her in a way that went beyond concern for a fellow citizen of Austin. So he began a quiet campaign. Every day when he stopped by the store, he would share some small observation designed to remind her that the world contained more than work and grief. He told her about the family of foxes he had seen playing near the river. He described the spectacular sunset the night before. He mentioned the new foals being born at the Randolph Ranch. He talked about nothing important, just the small beauties of ordinary life. At first, Helena barely responded, but gradually, over days and then weeks, she began to listen with something that resembled interest. She still did not smile, but occasionally she would ask a brief follow-up question. What color were the foxes? Or how many foals? In early September, when the heat finally began to break and the evenings grew cooler, Marshal Garrett took his biggest risk yet. He came to the store near closing time and waited while Helena served her last customers. When they were alone, he approached the counter. "Miss Turner, I was wondering if you might consider taking a walk with me this Sunday afternoon. There is a nice path along the river, shaded and cool. It would be good to get out of town for an hour or so." She stared at him as if he had suggested they fly to the moon. "Why?" "Why?" He had not expected that question. "Because I enjoy your company, and I thought you might enjoy a change of scenery." "I do not enjoy anything," she said bluntly, "and I do not understand why you keep coming here, talking to me. What do you want, Marshal?" Her directness surprised him, but he met it with his own. "I want to see you smile." "Smile?" She said the word like it was foreign. "I do not smile." "I have noticed." "Then why would you want to waste your time?" "It would not be a waste." He leaned against the counter, holding her gaze. "Miss Turner, Helena, I know you have been through something terrible. I do not know what exactly, and you do not have to tell me, but I do know that you are still alive, and being alive means more than just moving through the days like they are something to endure. You deserve more than that." "You do not know anything about me," she said, but her voice had lost some of its flatness. Emotion was creeping in, anger maybe, which was better than nothing. "You are right, I do not, but I would like to." She turned away from him, busying herself with straightening some already straight items on the shelf behind the counter. Her shoulders were rigid. "I cannot, Cannot what? Any of it. Walk with you, talk with you, pretend that things are normal when they are not. Her voice was low and tight. You want to see me smile? I have forgotten how. It has been so long that I do not think my face even remembers the shape of it anymore. So please stop trying. Stop being kind to me. It is harder that way. The confession hung in the air between them. Marshal Garrett felt something in his chest tighten, with an emotion he could not quite name. Harder than what? He asked gently. Than being numb. She still would not look at him. When I am numb, I do not hurt. When you are kind, when you try to make me notice things, remember things, it cracks something open and I start to feel again, and I cannot do that. I cannot. He wanted to go to her, to put his arms around her and promise that feeling was better than numbness, even when it hurt. But he knew she would bolt like a frightened deer if he pushed too hard. So instead he said quietly, "What happened to you, Helena?" For a long moment, she did not answer. Then, still facing away from him, she spoke. My husband, Robert. We were married for less than a year. He was a good man, truly good. Patient with me, kind, everything a husband should be. We had a small house in Fort Worth. I was happy. Her voice was barely above a whisper now. Then there was a fever. It swept through town. He got sick. I nursed him for 2 weeks, barely slept, did everything I could. But he died anyway. And then our baby, our daughter. She was only 3 months old. She got sick too. I held her while she died. She was so small, and she just stopped breathing in my arms. Marshal Garrett felt as if someone had punched him in the gut. Helena, I am so sorry. Everyone was sorry. So many people said they were sorry, and it did not change anything. They were still dead. My husband, my baby, my whole life, just gone. And I was left standing there, 22 years old, with nothing. No home, no family, no reason to keep going. She finally turned to face him, and her eyes were dry, but haunted. Robert's cousin Silas offered me work here in Austin. So I came, and I learned that if I do not feel anything, if I just work and sleep and work some more, I can survive. That is all I am trying to do, Marshal. Just survive. Surviving is not the same as living. It is close enough. He shook his head slowly. No, it is not. And I think part of you knows that, or else you would not be telling me this now. She wrapped her arms around herself, a gesture of protection. What do you want from me? I told you, I want to see you smile. I want to help you remember how. He moved a little closer, but still kept the counter between them, giving her space. I am not going to promise you that it would not hurt. Feeling things hurts sometimes, but it is also the only way to really be alive. And Helena, you deserve to be alive. Your husband and your daughter would not want you to bury yourself with them. You do not know what they would want. You are right, but I am guessing, based on what you said about your husband being a good man, that he would want you to be happy. Would he want this for you, this half-life? She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. I do not know how to be any different. Then let me help you learn. He said it simply, a statement of intent. One walk, that is all I'm asking. One walk this Sunday. If it is terrible and you hate every moment, I will not ask again. But give yourself a chance, Helena. Give me a chance. She was silent for so long, he thought she would refuse. But finally, she nodded once, a tiny movement. One walk. Relief flooded through him. One walk. Thank you. That Sunday afternoon, Marshal Garrett waited outside the boarding house at the agreed-upon time, half convinced Helena would not come. But at 2 o'clock, the door opened and she emerged wearing a blue dress he had not seen before, her hair still pulled back, but slightly softer somehow. She looked terrified. I am here, she said unnecessarily. I see that. I am glad. He offered his arm, and after a brief hesitation, she took it. Her hand on his forearm was feather light, as if she might pull away at any second. They walked through town toward the river, moving slowly. Marshal Garrett pointed out small things as they went. A mockingbird singing from a fence post, flowers blooming in someone's garden, children playing stickball in a dusty lot. Helena did not say much, but she looked at the things he pointed out, really looked at them, as if seeing the world for the first time in years. When they reached the river path, shaded by cottonwood and pecan trees, the temperature dropped several degrees. The sound of water moving over rocks provided a peaceful background. They walked in comfortable silence for a while before Marcus spoke. "Tell me about something you loved before," he said. "Before the loss. What made you happy?" Helena walked several steps before answering. "Music. I love music. My mother taught me to play the piano when I was young. I was not very good, but I enjoyed it. Robert used to ask me to play in the evenings. He would sit and listen, and it made him happy, which made me happy." "Do you still play?" "No, there is no piano at the boarding house, and I have not touched one since he died." "The church has a piano. I am sure Reverend Thompson would let you use it." She shook her head. "It would hurt too much." "Everything hurts at first when you start feeling again," Marcus said. "But it gets easier, and eventually the good memories do not hurt as much as they comfort." "You sound like you know." "I do." He had not planned to share his own story, but it seemed only fair since she had shared hers. "I lost someone too. Her name was Sarah. We were planning to marry. I was 19, working on a ranch near San Antonio. She lived in town. One day she was at the mercantile when two men tried to rob it. There was shooting. She was hit by a stray bullet. She died before I even knew there had been trouble." Helena's hand tightened on his arm. "I am sorry. It was 11 years ago now, and you were right. For a long time I was angry at the world, angry at those men, angry at myself for not being there, just angry. I threw myself into work, took dangerous jobs, did not care much if I lived or died, spent a few years like that." He paused, remembering those dark days. "Then one day I was tracking some rustlers through rough country, had been riding for days with barely any food or water, and I nearly got myself killed being reckless. Afterward, sitting there patched up and hurting, I realized Sarah would have hated what I had become. She was full of life and joy, and she would have been furious with me for wasting the life I still had." "So you just decided to be different?" "Not exactly. It was not that simple. But I decided to try. I stopped taking stupid risks. I started noticing things again, the sky, the land, the people around me. It was hard at first, like you said. It hurt. But slowly it got easier, and eventually I found I could remember Sarah with love instead of just pain. I could think about her smile and feel grateful I knew her instead of just devastated that I lost her." They had stopped walking and were standing near the riverbank, watching the water flow past. Helena was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I do not know if I can do that. Let go of the pain, I mean. Sometimes I feel like the pain is all I have left of them." "The pain is not all you have. You have memories. Love does not die just because the person does. You carry it with you." He turned to face her fully. "But you have to let yourself carry it forward into a new life, not let it anchor you to the past." "I am frightened," she admitted. "What if I am happy again, and then something terrible happens? What if I lose someone else?" "Then you will survive it, because you are strong enough. You survived the worst thing already." He took a chance and reached for her hand, holding it gently. "But Helena, you cannot refuse to live just because you might lose again. That is not protection. That is prison." She looked down at their joined hands, and something shifted in her expression. Not a smile, not yet, but a softening, a slight relaxation of the rigid control she held over herself. "This is hard." "I know, but you are doing it anyway. That takes courage." They stood there for a moment longer, then continued their walk. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Marcus told her funny stories about some of the situations he had dealt with as marshal. The time old Mr. Henderson's pig got loose and terrorized the town square, or when two farmers got into an argument over a property line that turned out to neither of them own the property anyway. To his amazement and delight, Helena almost laughed at one point, catching herself and stopping the sound. But it had been there, trying to escape. When he walked her back to the boarding house, she paused at the steps. "Thank you for today." "You are welcome. Could we do this again? Maybe next Sunday?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I think I would like that." It became their routine. Every Sunday afternoon, unless his duties as marshal prevented it, Marcus would call for Helena, and they would walk. Sometimes by the river, sometimes through the hills outside town, sometimes just through the streets of Austin. They talked about everything and nothing. He learned that she loved reading but rarely had time for it. She learned that he had a younger sister living in Houston with her husband and 3 children. He discovered she had a sharp wit buried under years of grief. She found that his calm exterior hid a mischievous sense of humor. Slowly, over weeks and then months, Helena began to thaw. Her responses grew longer. She volunteered information without being asked. She made observations that showed she was starting to notice and appreciate the world around her again. She still did not smile, but the absolute emptiness in her eyes was fading, replaced by something more alive. In October, Marcus convinced her to attend a town social. It took considerable persuasion, but she finally agreed. She wore the blue dress again, and he wore his best shirt and jacket. When they arrived at the town hall, where the social was being held, several people looked surprised to see Helena. She had turned down so many invitations over the years that most people had stopped asking. They danced, awkwardly at first, because Helena had not danced in years. But Marcus was patient, guiding her through the steps of a simple waltz. Other couples swirled around them, and a fiddle player provided lively music. Helena concentrated intensely on not stepping on his feet, her face serious. "You are thinking too hard," Marcus said, smiling down at her. "Just feel the music. I am trying not to embarrass us both." "Impossible. You could never embarrass me." She looked up at him then, really looked at him, and something passed between them, a connection deeper than friendship. Her step faltered slightly, and he steadied her, his hand firm on her waist. "Marcus," she said quietly. "Yes? I think I am starting to feel things again, and it terrifies me. I know, but I am here. You are not alone in this." They finished the dance, and several other couples came over to greet Helena, genuinely pleased to see her joining the community again. She handled their kind words with more grace than Marcus had expected, though he could see the effort it cost her. When they finally left the social and he walked her home, she was exhausted, but not in a bad way. "That was not as terrible as I feared," she said at the boarding house steps. "High praise indeed," he teased gently. She almost smiled. He saw it, the tiny upward curve at the corner of her mouth that lasted maybe half a second before disappearing. But it had been there. His heart lifted. "Did you just almost smile?" he asked. "No." But there was a new lightness in her voice that had not been there before. "I think you did." "You are imagining things, Marshal." "Marcus? I wish you would call me Marcus when it is just us." She looked at him in the lamplight from the boarding house window. "Marcus?" she said softly, testing his name. "Thank you for tonight." "It was my pleasure, Helena, truly." As autumn deepened and the weather cooled, their relationship deepened as well. They saw each other almost daily, either during his stops at the store or on their Sunday walks. He began bringing her small gifts, nothing expensive but thoughtful, a book he thought she would enjoy, a hair ribbon in a color that matched her eyes, wildflowers picked from the hills. She accepted each gift with increasing ease, and once or twice she surprised him with something in return, fresh-baked bread from Mrs. Patterson's kitchen, or a new handkerchief she had embroidered with his initials. In November, Silas Turner finally drank himself to death. Helena found him one morning in the back room of the store, having succumbed to liver failure in his sleep. Marcus helped her manage the aftermath, dealing with the doctor and the funeral arrangements. Silas had no other family, and his will, such as it was, left everything to Helena. She inherited the store along with its debts, which were substantial. "I do not know if I can keep it running," she told Marcus a few days after the funeral. They were in the store after closing, going through Silas's chaotic records. "He owed money to half the suppliers in Texas. Let me help you figure it out." Marcus was no businessman, but he could read and do arithmetic, and between them, they spent several evenings sorting through the mess. It turned out Silas owed less than Helena had feared, and the store itself was profitable when properly managed. With careful planning and hard work, she could make a go of it. "I will help you," Marcus said. "Not with money, I do not have much of that, but with labor. I can help with heavy work, dealing with suppliers, whatever you need." "Why would you do that?" He looked at her across the table, covered in ledgers and papers. "I think you know why." She met his eyes, and for the first time, she did not look away. "I am afraid," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of caring for you, of letting myself love again. Because what if I lose you too?" "You might," he said honestly. "I am a lawman. It is dangerous work sometimes. But, Helena, we could spend our whole lives being afraid of loss, or We could take the risk and be happy for whatever time we have. I would rather have 1 year of real happiness with you than 50 years of playing it safe and never really living." She was silent for a long moment, and he could see the war being waged behind her eyes. Fear against hope. The past against the possible future. Then, slowly, she reached across the table and took his hand. "I care about you, Marcus, more than I thought I could care about anyone again. I care about you too. I think I am falling in love with you, Helena. I probably have been for months now." A tear slipped down her cheek, but she was not wearing her frozen expression. She was feeling, truly feeling, and it showed on her face. "I do not know how to do this, how to be in love again. We will figure it out together." He came around the table and pulled her gently to her feet, then into his arms. She stiffened for just a moment, then relaxed against him, resting her head on his chest. He could feel her trembling slightly. "I am so scared," she murmured against his shirt. "I know, but I have got you. I am not going anywhere." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet store. Outside, Austin was settling down for the night, but inside, something new was being born between them. Over the next weeks, their courtship became official. Marcus began calling on Helena properly at the boarding house, sitting with her in the parlor under Mrs. Patterson's watchful but approving eye. They went to church together on Sundays, then took their walks afterward. He helped her with the store, and she helped him think through problems he was dealing with as Marshal. They became a unit, a team, and the town began to think of them as a couple. Helena still struggled sometimes with fear and grief, but Marcus was always patient. When she had bad days, when the memories overwhelmed her, and the numbness threatened to return, he sat with her and let her feel what she needed to feel without trying to fix it. He was just present, steady and reliable, a rock she could cling to when the waves of emotion threatened to pull her under. In December, on a cold evening when they were sitting together in the store after closing, Helena said suddenly, "Tell me something you want for the future." Marcus looked up from the accounts he was reviewing. "What do you mean?" "Something you want, a dream or a hope, something to look forward to." He considered the question carefully. "I want a family someday, a wife, children, a home that is really mine. I have spent a lot of years drifting, working jobs that could end any time. I would like to put down roots, build something lasting. With me?" Her voice was tentative. "If you will have me, yes, with you." She looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. "I had that once, the husband, the baby, the home, and I lost it all. The idea of trying again, of risking that kind of loss again, it makes me want to run away. But the idea of not trying, of letting fear win, that is worse somehow." She looked up at him. "You have changed me, Marcus. You made me remember how to live, and I think maybe you are making me remember how to hope. That is all I wanted, to see you smile, to see you happy. If I have helped with that, then I am grateful. You have done more than help. You have saved me." She stood and crossed to where he sat, then did something she had never done before. She reached for his face with both hands and kissed him, soft and tentative and full of new emotion. Marcus froze for half a heartbeat in surprise, then kissed her back, gently, trying to pour all his love and patience and promise into that simple touch. When they parted, both were breathing a little harder. "I love you," Helena said, and her voice shook but was clear. "I am terrified, and I do not know how this will work, and I am probably going to be difficult sometimes because I am still healing. But I love you, Marcus Garrett, and I want to try. I want to have a future with you." Joy flooded through him, bright and warm. "I love you too, and we will figure it out together, one day at a time. You do not have to be anything other than yourself, Helena. That is all I want." She smiled then. It was small and uncertain, like she had forgotten the shape of it and was relearning, but it was a real, genuine smile. Her whole face changed, lighting up from within, and Marcus felt like he had just witnessed a miracle. "There it is," he said softly, touching her cheek. "I have been waiting so long to see that." "I had forgotten how," she said, but she was still smiling. "You made me remember." They stood together in the quiet store, holding each other, while outside the December wind blew cold through Austin, and the stars came out one by one in the vast Texas sky. Marcus proposed properly on Christmas Eve. He had been working extra jobs for months to save enough money for a ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond. It was not fancy, but it was beautiful, and it was bought with honest work. He asked Helena to take a walk with him after the Christmas Eve service at church, even though it was cold. She bundled up in her coat and scarf, and they walked through the nearly empty streets to the river path. The moon was bright, reflecting off the water, and their breath made clouds in the cold air. Marcus led her to a spot where they had stood on their first walk together, back in September. It felt appropriate to come full circle. "Helena," he began, taking both her hands in his. "When I first saw you, you looked like you had given up on life. You were just going through the motions, surviving, but not living. It broke my heart, even though I barely knew you. And I made it my mission to help you find your way back, to help you remember how to smile. You did that," she said softly. "You gave me back my life. No, you did that yourself. I just walked beside you. But Helena, I do not want to just walk beside you anymore. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to help you run the store and raise a family and grow old together. I want everything, all of it, with you." He pulled the ring from his pocket and held it up in the moonlight. "Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Helena's face, but she was smiling through them, that beautiful smile that he had worked so hard to coax back into existence. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, Marcus, I will marry you. I want all of that too. I want a future with you. I want to be happy again. I want to live, really live, and I want to do it with you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that was deeper and more passionate than any they had shared before. She kissed him back with equal intensity, and when they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "I love you so much," she said. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Never. I will never give up on you." They walked back to the boarding house hand in hand, making plans and dreaming out loud about their future. They would marry in the spring, they decided. Helena would keep running the store, and Marcus would continue as Marshal. They would live in the rooms above the store at first, then maybe build a house someday when they could afford it. They wanted children, though both were nervous about it given Helena's past loss. But they would try, and they would face whatever came together. The engagement was announced on Christmas Day, and the town of Austin was genuinely happy for them. The ladies of the church immediately began planning the wedding, and Helena found herself swept up in preparations and social calls and all the normal bustle of a woman about to be married. It was overwhelming sometimes, but Marcus was always there to steady her, to remind her to breathe, to make her laugh when she got too anxious. The months between their engagement and the wedding were some of the happiest of Helena's life. She was learning to live in the present instead of being trapped in the past. She still had hard days, times when the grief would hit her unexpectedly and she would need to cry or be alone, but those days grew less frequent, and Marcus always understood. He never pressured her or made her feel bad for struggling. He just loved her through it. They were married in April of 1877, on a beautiful spring day when the wildflowers were blooming all over the Texas hills. The ceremony took place in the church, with Reverend Thompson officiating and what seemed like the entire town of Austin in attendance. Helena wore a dress she had made herself, pale yellow with lace at the collar and cuffs. Marcus wore a new suit he had bought for the occasion. They stood at the altar and made their vows to each other, promising to love and honor and cherish for all the days of their lives. When Reverend Thompson pronounced them husband and wife and told Marcus he could kiss his bride, Helena was smiling that radiant smile, and when they kissed, the church erupted in applause. They walked back down the aisle together, married, beginning their new life. The reception was held at the town hall, with music and dancing and more food than anyone could eat. Helena danced with her new husband, and this time she did not worry about her steps. She just felt the music and let Marcus lead her, and it was wonderful. She was happy, truly happy, in a way she had not been in so many years. That night, in the rooms above the store that were now their home, Marcus carried Helena over the threshold and set her down gently. The space was small but cozy, and Helena had spent the past weeks making it comfortable, adding curtains and rugs and little touches that made it feel like home. "Are you happy?" Marcus asked, pulling her close. "So happy," she said, resting her head against his chest. "Happier than I thought I could ever be again. You did that for me, Marcus. You brought me back to life." "We did it together." He kissed the top of her head. "And this is just the beginning, Helena. We have our whole lives ahead of us." They made love for the first time that night, tenderly and slowly, learning each other. Helena had been nervous, remembering her first husband but not wanting to compare, worried about so many things. But Marcus was patient and gentle, and it was beautiful and right. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, talking softly until they fell asleep in each other's arms. Life settled into a new rhythm. Helena ran the store with increasing confidence and success. She proved to be a shrewd businesswoman, negotiating better prices with suppliers and expanding the inventory. The store began to thrive as it never had under Silas's management. Marcus continued as marshal, keeping the peace in Austin, which was growing rapidly as more settlers arrived and the railroad expanded. They were happy together. They laughed often, talked about everything, made love regularly, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of being together. They had disagreements sometimes, like any couple, but they worked through them. Helena was learning that conflict did not mean catastrophe, that you could argue with someone and still love them, that relationships were messy and complicated, and that was okay. In the late summer of 1877, Helena realized she was pregnant. The discovery brought a complicated mix of emotions. She was thrilled at the prospect of a child with Marcus, but also terrified, remembering the daughter she had lost. When she told Marcus, he held her while she cried tears of both joy and fear. "I am so scared," she admitted. "What if something happens? What if I lose this baby too?" "We will do everything we can to keep both of you safe and healthy," Marcus said, "and we will have faith. But Helena, even though you are scared, I can see you are also happy. Let yourself feel that happiness." "I am happy. I want this baby so much. I want your child." "Our child," he corrected gently. "And whatever happens, we will face it together." The pregnancy was not easy. Helena was sick for the first few months, and there were moments of fear when she would feel a pain or notice something unusual and panic. But Marcus was always there, calming her, reassuring her, taking care of her. The doctor, a kind older man named Dr. Morrison, kept a close watch on her and declared that everything seemed to be progressing normally. As Helena's belly grew and the baby became more real, her fear gradually gave way to cautious hope and then genuine excitement. She and Marcus spent evenings talking about names and making plans for the baby. Helena sewed tiny clothes and blankets. Marcus built a cradle from cedar wood, working on it carefully in the evenings, determined to make it perfect. The women of Austin rallied around Helena, hosting a party for her, giving advice, offering help. Helena, who had been so isolated for so long, found herself part of a community of support. She had friends now, real friends who cared about her and her growing family. In March of 1878, after a long labor that left them both exhausted and scared, Helena gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When Dr. Morrison placed the squalling infant in her arms, Helena looked down at him and felt a rush of love so powerful it took her breath away. He was perfect, with a shock of dark hair like his father and tiny fists that waved in the air. "A son," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. He was sitting beside Helena on the bed, one arm around her shoulders, staring at their child with wonder. "We have a son." "What should we name him?" Helena asked, though they had discussed this many times. "What about James?" Marcus suggested. "James Robert, after your first husband. He was part of your life, and I would be honored to remember him." Helena looked at her husband with tears in her eyes. "You would do that?" "Of course. He gave you happiness once, and he gave you the strength to survive losing him. He deserves to be remembered." Marcus touched the baby's tiny hand. "James Robert Garrett." "It is perfect," Helena whispered. Then, looking down at her son, she smiled that beautiful smile that Marcus loved so much. "Hello, James. Welcome to the world, little one. We love you so much." The early days of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful. James was a fussy baby who did not sleep much, but Helena and Marcus took turns walking him at night, singing to him, rocking him. Helena was nervous every moment at first, terrified something would happen to him, but as days turned into weeks and James continued to thrive, she slowly relaxed. Marcus was an attentive father, involved in every aspect of James's care. He changed diapers and gave baths, and spent hours just holding his son, talking to him in a soft voice, telling him about the world he would grow up in. Helena watched them together and fell even more in love with her husband. One evening when James was about 3 months old, Helena was nursing him in the rocking chair Marcus had brought up to their living quarters. Marcus was sitting nearby, watching them. Helena looked up and caught his eye. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I am thinking about how far you have come," Marcus said. "Do you remember when I first met you? You could not even smile. And now look at you. You are happy, truly happy. You are a mother again. You are living, really living." "Because of you," Helena said. "You would not let me stay buried in my grief. You pulled me back into the world, one gentle step at a time. You did the hard work yourself. I just walked beside you. No, you did more than that. You loved me when I could not love myself. You saw something in me worth saving when I thought I was beyond saving. You made me remember how to smile, Marcus. You gave me back my life." She looked down at James, who was falling asleep at her breast. "And now we have this beautiful life together. A son, a home, each other. I never thought I could have this again. I thought that part of me was dead. But you brought me back." Marcus crossed to her and knelt beside the rocking chair. He put one hand on her shoulder and one on James's little back. "I love you, Helena Garrett. I loved you when you were broken, and I love you now that you are healed. I will love you for all the rest of our days. I love you too. Forever." They stayed like that for a while, the three of them together, a family. Outside, the sounds of Austin drifted up, the town settling down for the night. But inside, in their small home above the store, everything was perfect. As James grew, Helena continued to blossom. She was an attentive mother, but also maintained her work at the store, finding a balance between the two roles. Marcus hired a young woman named Annie to help in the store part-time, watching James when Helena needed to work. The arrangement worked well, and the store continued to prosper. James was a happy child, quick to laugh and curious about everything. He had his mother's eyes and his father's dark hair. As he grew into a toddler, he was constantly getting into things, exploring every corner of the store and the rooms above. Marcus and Helena took turns chasing after him, laughing at his antics even as they tried to keep him safe. In 1880, Helena became pregnant again. This time, though she still had moments of fear, she was much calmer about it. She had carried one child to term successfully, nursed him, raised him past the dangerous infant stage. She could do it again. This pregnancy was easier than the first. She was less sick, less anxious. In the late fall of 1880, she gave birth to a daughter, a beautiful baby girl with light hair and a serious expression. They named her Emma Louise. James, now 2.5, was fascinated by his baby sister. He wanted to hold her constantly and would bring her toys and try to share his food with her. It was adorable and slightly terrifying for Helena and Marcus, who had to keep a close eye on his helpful but sometimes dangerous enthusiasm. Life was full and busy and good. The store continued to do well. Marcus was respected as Marshal, and Austin was growing into a real city. They bought a small house in 1882, finally having saved enough money. It was nothing fancy, but it had 3 bedrooms and a real kitchen and a yard where the children could play. Helena cried with happiness the day they moved in. "Our own house," she said, standing in the empty parlor. "I never thought I would have this again." "We built it together," Marcus said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Everything we have, we built together." Their family continued to grow. Another son, Thomas, was born in 1883. Then another daughter, Catherine, in 1885. Each pregnancy was easier than the last, and each birth a celebration. Helena loved being a mother, and Marcus was a devoted father. Their children grew up in a home filled with love and laughter. James grew into a responsible boy who helped at the store and looked after his younger siblings. Emma was quiet and thoughtful, always reading when she could find a book. Thomas was adventurous and always getting into scrapes. Catherine was the baby, spoiled a bit by everyone, but sweet-natured. The years passed quickly. Austin continued to grow and modernize. Electric lights came to some parts of town. The railroad expanded. More people arrived every year. Marcus eventually stepped down as Marshal in 1890, feeling it was time for a younger man to take over. He helped Helena run the store, which had become one of the most successful businesses in Austin. Their children grew up. James became interested in law and eventually went to study in San Antonio. Emma married a local rancher and moved to a spread outside of town. Thomas followed his father into law-keeping, becoming a deputy in Austin. Catherine, the youngest, showed a talent for music and studied piano, fulfilling the dream her mother had once abandoned. Marcus and Helena grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces gaining lines, but their love never dimming. They still took walks together when they could, still held hands, still told each other, "I love you," every day. They had built a good life together, full of love and family and purpose. One evening in 1895, when they were both in their late 40s and sitting on the porch of their house watching the sunset, Helena leaned against Marcus's shoulder. "Do you remember when we first met?" she asked. "When I could not even smile?" "I remember," Marcus said, putting his arm around her. "You were the saddest person I had ever seen. I had forgotten how to be happy. I had forgotten so many things. But you helped me remember, one day at a time." She looked up at him. "You saved my life, Marcus?" "We saved each other," he corrected. "You gave me purpose and family and joy. You made me want to be a better man." "We did all right, did we not?" Helena smiled, that beautiful smile that still made his heart skip. "We built something good. We built something wonderful." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "And we are not done yet. We have got grandchildren to spoil, and years ahead of us still." "I am looking forward to every one of them," Helena said. "With you, I am looking forward to everything." They sat together as the sun set over Austin. Two people who had found each other when both needed it most, who had built a life together from grief and hope and love. Helena had not smiled in so long she forgot how, but the cowboy made her remember slowly one day. And in remembering, she had found not just happiness, but a whole new life, full of love and family and endless possibility. The stars came out one by one over Texas, and Marcus and Helena Garrett sat together, holding hands, grateful for every moment they had been given, every trial they had overcome, every joy they had shared. They had found their way home to each other, and that made all the difference. Years continued to pass in their gentle rhythm. James established a successful law practice in San Antonio, but visited often with his wife and children. Emma and her rancher husband had 5 children who loved coming to town to visit their grandparents. Thomas married a school teacher, and they had 3 daughters who were the light of his life. Catherine's musical talent took her to perform in Houston and Dallas, though she always returned to Austin between tours. Marcus and Helena became beloved figures in Austin. Everyone knew them, the marshal who had retired, and his wife who ran the finest general store in town. They were known for their generosity, often extending credit to families in hard times, donating to the church and school, helping newcomers get established. The store became more than just a business. It was a gathering place, a point of connection in the growing city. In 1900, on their 23rd wedding anniversary, Marcus surprised Helena by taking her on a trip. They had never traveled much, too busy raising children and running the store. But now the children were grown, and the store could be left in capable hands for a few weeks. They took the train to the Texas coast, to Galveston, and spent 2 weeks walking on the beach, eating fresh seafood, and enjoying each other's company away from the demands of daily life. One evening, they were walking along the shore at sunset, their shoes off and the warm water lapping at their feet. Helena stopped and turned to face the Gulf, breathing in the salt air. "This is beautiful," she said. "Thank you for bringing me here." "You deserve beautiful things," Marcus said, coming to stand beside her. "You always have." "Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been?" Helena asked. "If you had not been so persistent back in Austin all those years ago? If I had stayed trapped in my grief? I try not to think about it. It makes me too sad to imagine." "Me too." Helena took his hand. "But I am grateful every day that you did not give up on me, that you saw something in me worth fighting for when I could not see it myself. I saw a woman who was hurting, but who had so much love left to give. I just wanted to help you find your way back to that love." Marcus squeezed her hand. "And you did. Look at what we have built. 4 children, grandchildren, a life full of meaning. All because you were brave enough to try again." "We were both brave," Helena corrected. "You risked your heart on a woman who was broken. That took courage too." They stood there watching the sun sink into the Gulf, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, and Helena thought about the long journey that had brought them to this moment, from the depths of grief and numbness to this life full of love and joy. It had not been easy. There had been hard days and painful memories and moments when she had wanted to retreat back into the safety of not feeling. But Marcus had been there every step of the way, patient and loving, reminding her that life was worth living. When they returned to Austin, their grandchildren came flooding into the house, excited to see them and hear about their trip. Helena held the youngest ones on her lap and told them about the ocean, about the ships and the seabirds and the endless water. They listened with wide eyes, and she felt her heart overflow with love for all of them. That night, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet, Marcus and Helena sat together in their bedroom. Helena was brushing her hair, now more silver than brown, and Marcus was preparing for bed. "I was thinking," Helena said, meeting his eyes in the mirror, "about how you used to say you wanted to see me smile. I remember. I smile all the time now, so much that my cheeks hurt sometimes." She turned to face him. "You did that. You brought me back to life, Marcus. You made me remember how to smile, how to laugh, how to love. You gave me everything." Marcus crossed to her and took the brush from her hand, setting it aside. He cupped her face in his hands, looking into her eyes with all the love and tenderness he had shown her for over 2 decades. "You gave me everything, too. A family, a purpose, a reason to be the best man I could be. We gave each other life, Helena. That is what love does." They held each other close, 2 people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, who had chosen love over fear, hope over despair, life over mere survival. And in choosing those things, they had created something beautiful and lasting. The years continued on. Marcus and Helena grew old together, their bodies slower, but their love as strong as ever. They saw their grandchildren grow and begin families of their own. They celebrated 50th wedding anniversaries and 70th birthdays. They faced losses, friends who passed, the inevitable sadness that comes with long life. But they faced it all together, and that made it bearable. In 1910, at 60 years old, Helena finally sold the store. It had been a good run, over 30 years of service to Austin. A young couple bought it and promised to maintain the traditions Helena had established. She spent her retirement reading all the books she had never had time for, playing the piano she had finally allowed herself to return to, and spending time with her ever-growing family. Marcus spent his days helping Thomas with occasional law-keeping tasks, working in the garden he had planted behind their house, and sitting on the porch with Helena, watching Austin bustle and grow around them. They had seen the town transform from a frontier settlement to a thriving city, and they had been part of that transformation. One spring evening in 1912, they were sitting on their porch as had become their habit, holding hands and watching the world go by. Their youngest grandson had just left after bringing them fresh bread his mother had baked. The evening was mild and pleasant, with a soft breeze carrying the scent of flowers from Helena's garden. "This is nice," Helena said softly. "Peaceful." "It is," Marcus agreed. "Though I suspect Thomas is going to stop by later with another story about his daughters getting into trouble." Helena laughed, that full, rich laugh that Marcus still loved hearing after all these years. "Those girls are spirited. They remind me of someone." "Who?" "You, when you were younger. Always getting into things, always finding adventure." "I think they get that from their mother," Marcus protested, but he was smiling. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Helena said quietly, "Marcus, do you know what I was thinking about today?" "What is that?" "The day we met. When I was so lost and broken, and you came into the store like you belonged there. I thought you were going to be just another customer, someone passing through my day that I would not remember. I never imagined you would change my entire life." "I never imagined it either," Marcus admitted. "I just knew I could not walk away from you. Something in me recognized something in you, even then, like we were meant to find each other." "We were," Helena said with certainty. "I believe that. I believe you were sent to me exactly when I needed you most, and I hope I gave you what you needed too." "You gave me everything I ever wanted," Marcus said. "A love that lasted, a family, a life worth living. You made me complete, Helena." She squeezed his hand, tears gathering in her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you, Marcus Garrett. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. I love you too, my darling, always and forever." They continued sitting there as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. 2 souls who had found each other across pain and loss, who had chosen love and built something beautiful. Helena thought about the woman she had been, the one who could not smile, who had forgotten how to live. That woman seemed like someone else now, someone from a distant past. The woman she had become was happy, fulfilled, surrounded by love and family and a lifetime of beautiful memories. And it had all started with a cowboy who would not give up on her, who saw past her grief to the person she could be again, who helped her remember, slowly, day by day, how to smile. The years rolled on, as years do. Marcus and Helena celebrated their 40th anniversary in 1917, surrounded by children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren. It was a huge celebration, with people coming from all over Texas to honor the couple who had become legendary in Austin for their love story and their contributions to the community. At the party, held in the town hall that had been the site of their wedding reception so many years before, their son James gave a speech. "My parents," he said, his voice carrying across the crowded room, "have shown us all what true love looks like. They have shown us that, even when life breaks us, we can be put back together. My mother was lost when she first came to Austin, trapped in grief and pain. My father helped her find her way back, not by fixing her, but by loving her exactly as she was and believing she could heal. Together, they built a life that has touched everyone in this room. They taught us about resilience, about hope, about the power of choosing love, even when it is scary. So, please join me in honoring Marcus and Helena Garrett, the finest people I know, and the best parents anyone could ask for." The room erupted in applause. Helena was crying, and Marcus had his arm around her, his own eyes suspiciously bright. They stood together as their family and friends came forward to offer congratulations and share stories. The party went on late into the night, full of music and dancing and joy. When Marcus and Helena finally made it home in the early hours of the morning, exhausted but happy, they collapsed into their bed fully clothed. Helena kicked off her shoes and turned to face Marcus. "That was wonderful," she said. "It was, though I am too old to be staying up this late. We are both too old, but it was worth it." Helena reached for his hand. 40 years, Marcus. Can you believe it? Some days it feels like 40 minutes. Others it feels like we have always been together. Marcus brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Here is to 40 more." "I do not think we get 40 more," Helena said with a laugh. "But however many we get, I want to spend them with you." "That is the plan." They fell asleep holding hands, as they had done nearly every night for 40 years. The next years were gentle ones. Marcus and Helena were in their late 60s and early 70s, slowing down but still engaged with life. They spent their days reading, gardening, and enjoying their family. They were blessed with good health for their age, still able to take short walks and manage their daily activities without too much difficulty. In 1921, Helena woke one morning feeling unusually tired. She mentioned it to Marcus, but neither thought much of it. They were old. Tiredness was to be expected. But over the next weeks, the tiredness persisted and was joined by other symptoms. Finally, Marcus insisted she see Dr. Morrison's son, who had taken over his father's practice. The diagnosis was not good. Helena had a growth in her stomach, and at her age, there was little that could be done. The young Dr. Morrison was kind but honest. She likely had months, maybe a year if she was lucky. Helena took the news with surprising calm. She had lived a long, full life. She had loved and been loved. She had raised children and seen grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She had no real regrets. But seeing the devastation on Marcus's face when she told him broke her heart. "No," he said, his voice raw. "No, we are supposed to grow old together. We are supposed to have more time." "We have had 44 years," Helena said gently, taking his hands. "That is more than many people get, and they have been wonderful years, Marcus. You gave me a life I never thought I would have again. You cannot be greedy now. I can and I will. I am not ready to lose you. I know, and I am not ready to leave you. But we do not always get a choice." She pulled him close, holding him as he cried. Strong, steady Marcus, who had been her rock for so long, now breaking in her arms. She held him and stroked his hair and whispered words of love and comfort. The next months were bittersweet. Helena's health declined slowly but steadily. She tired easily and the pain increased, though Dr. Morrison did his best to manage it. But she remained herself, still smiling, still engaged with her family, determined to make the most of whatever time she had left. Their children and grandchildren came to visit often, spending time with Helena, sharing memories and love. She told them stories about their father and grandfather, about the early days in Austin, about how love had saved her when she thought she was beyond saving. She wanted them to remember, to carry forward the lessons she and Marcus had learned. Marcus barely left her side. He read to her when she was too tired to read herself. He held her hand through the bad nights. He helped her to the chair by the window so she could look out at the garden. He told her over and over that he loved her, that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him, that he would love her forever. One afternoon in late autumn of 1921, Helena was sitting in her chair by the window, wrapped in blankets. The leaves were turning gold and red, and the late afternoon sun slanted through the glass, warming her face. Marcus was sitting beside her, as always. "Marcus," she said softly, "do you remember the first time I smiled for you? Really smiled? I remember. It was like the sun coming out after a long winter. I had forgotten how to be happy. But you helped me remember. You were so patient with me, so kind. You never pushed, you just kept showing up, kept offering me reasons to live. And slowly, I found my way back." She turned to look at him, her eyes still bright despite her illness. "I want you to promise me something. Anything. When I am gone, I want you to keep living. Really living, not just surviving. I want you to still take your walks, still work in the garden, still spend time with our family. I want you to be happy, Marcus. Promise me. Helena, promise me, please. I need to know you will be all right." Marcus was silent for a long moment, struggling with emotion. Finally, he said, "I promise, but it is going to be so hard without you. I know, but you are strong, and you are not alone. You have our children, our grandchildren. They will help you, the way you once helped me." She reached for his hand. "And Marcus, I will always be with you. Love does not die. You taught me that. Even when the person is gone, the love remains. I know, but I am going to miss you so much. I am going to miss you too. But I am not afraid. I have had a beautiful life, and most of it was beautiful because of you. I am ready whenever it is time." They sat together as the sun set, holding hands, saying everything and nothing. Later that evening, surrounded by their children, and with Marcus holding her close, Helena passed peacefully in her sleep. She was 70 years old and had lived 44 years longer than she ever expected to when Marcus first walked into that store in 1876. Marcus was devastated by her loss, but tried to honor the promise he had made. He continued living in their house, tended the garden she had loved, spent time with family. His children made sure he was never alone for long, constantly inviting him for meals or bringing the grandchildren to visit. They knew he was struggling, but also knew he was trying. In the evenings, Marcus would sit on the porch where he and Helena had spent so many hours together, and he would talk to her as if she was still there. He told her about his day, about the children, about the funny things the great-grandchildren had done. It comforted him to imagine she could hear him. One evening, about 6 months after Helena's death, Marcus was sitting on the porch watching the sunset when his eldest granddaughter Sarah came to visit. She was a lovely young woman of 24, recently married herself. "Grandfather," she said, sitting beside him, "I wanted to ask you something." "Of course, dear. What is it?" "I want to know about grandmother, about how you met, how you fell in love. My mother has told me some, but I want to hear it from you." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then began to speak. He told her everything, about the woman behind the counter who could not smile, about his determination to help her heal, about the slow process of helping her remember how to live. He talked for over an hour, sharing the story of their love, and as he spoke, he felt Helena's presence so strongly, it was almost like she was there beside him. "She sounds amazing," Sarah said when he finished, tears on her cheeks. She was. And you know the remarkable thing? She did not think she was. She thought she was broken, beyond repair. But she was wrong. She just needed someone to believe in her, to be patient while she found her way back. And once she did, once she remembered how to live and love, she was the most extraordinary person I have ever known. "You loved her very much." "I did. I still do. That will never change." Marcus smiled, and it was bittersweet but genuine. "She taught me that love does not end with death. It continues in memories and in the people we shared our love with. You are part of her legacy, Sarah. All of you are. Her love lives on in this family." Sarah hugged him tightly. "Thank you for telling me, grandfather. I will make sure my children know the story too. Grandmother Helena will never be forgotten." After Sarah left, Marcus sat alone on the porch as the stars came out. He thought about everything he and Helena had shared, all the years and experiences and love. He missed her with an ache that never quite went away, but he was grateful too. Grateful for every moment they had been given, every smile, every laugh, every quiet evening together. "I kept my promise," he said softly to the night air. "I am still living, Helena. It is hard without you, but I am doing it. Because you taught me how. You taught me that even when life breaks us, we can heal. We can love again. We can find joy again. You taught me all of that, my darling, and I will never forget." A breeze stirred the evening air, warm and gentle, and Marcus chose to believe it was Helena's way of saying she heard him, that she was proud of him, that she loved him still. Marcus lived for 5 more years after Helena's death. They were good years in many ways, full of family and connection. He saw more great-grandchildren born, celebrated more milestones, continued to be part of the thriving family he and Helena had created together. In the summer of 1926, at the age of 80, Marcus died peacefully in his sleep, in the same bed he had shared with Helena for so many years. His children found him in the morning, a peaceful expression on his face, his hand resting on Helena's pillow, as if reaching for her. On the nightstand was a photograph of the two of them taken on their 40th anniversary, both smiling at the camera, Marcus's arm around Helena, their love evident in every line of their faces. They buried Marcus next to Helena in the Austin Cemetery, under a big oak tree. The headstone read, Marcus Garrett, 1846-1926, Helena Garrett, 1851-1921. Together forever. At the funeral, which was attended by what seemed like half of Austin, James spoke again about his parents. "My father once told me," he said, "that he wanted to see my mother smile. She had not smiled in so long she forgot how. But he made her remember slowly, one day at a time. And in doing that, he did not just save her life. He built a life with her, a beautiful life full of love and family and joy. They showed us all what it means to truly love someone, to be patient with them, to believe in them even when they have stopped believing in themselves. They showed us that it is never too late to heal, to hope, to begin again. That is their legacy, and it lives on in all of us." The story of Marcus and Helena Garrett became part of Austin's history, passed down through generations of their family. Their descendants grew and spread across Texas and beyond, but they all knew the story of the cowboy who helped the grieving woman remember how to smile, and the life they built together from the ashes of loss. The store where they met was eventually torn down to make way for newer buildings as Austin continued to grow. But the house they had shared for so many years remained in the family for decades, a gathering place where children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren would come to hear stories about Marcus and Helena, about their love that had endured everything life threw at them. And in every generation, there were those who faced their own losses and grief, who felt broken and beyond repair. And in those dark moments, they would remember the story of Helena, who could not smile until Marcus helped her remember how. They would remember that healing is possible, that love can break through even the deepest numbness, that it is never too late to choose life over mere survival. The legacy of Marcus and Helena Garrett was not just the large family they created, or the businesses they built, or the community they served. It was the lesson they taught simply by living their lives together, by choosing each other every day, by believing that love could overcome anything. It was a legacy of hope, of resilience, of the transformative power of patient, steadfast love. And so their story lived on, told and retold, a testament to the idea that sometimes the greatest love stories are not the ones that begin with lightning bolts and grand gestures, but the ones that begin quietly with one person seeing another's pain and deciding to stay, to help, to love them back to life, one smile, one day, one moment at a time.